floor is yours.
Thank you, Dagny. I will say in introduction that 100th anniversaries seem to be right moments for having new thoughts about new valorization or digitization of knowledge material. I remember 5 years ago, we were at an European level very proud to present the results of several digitization campaigns on the frame of Europeana collections 14-18. And it was really a cross-border initiative that allowed many institutions, among them the National and University Library in Strasbourg, to make their ancient material, the ancient documentation material, more visible for a greater researcher public. Nowadays, the occasion is a new one. It is the 100th centenary of the independence of the Baltic countries, so something more Pacific and a more positive occasion. And I think it's also a good moment for thinking about new coordinated means to valorize a common cultural heritage. And I'm not speaking here only about heritage that is in relation with the Baltic countries, but I think that every European heritage must have connections with every European countries. So I was kindly asked to speak here about proactive strategies regarding research in memory institutions being places where digital and heritage face each other very much. And I think that libraries are very good examples of that. So when we speak about research across border, what is the potential of memory institutions? I would like here to quote some examples that are taken from the National and University Library of Strasbourg. It's because I know those examples very good. It's not to emphasize my own library, but I think those examples are paradigmatic of the way you could valorize ancient collections that are not particularly known and that we bring to valorize much more. A good example coming from Strasbourg is an example about which I already had the opportunity to speak about here in Riga. It is the fact that in Strasbourg we have a part of the collection of the former Royal and then University Library of the city of Königsberg. And this collection is not so much known. It's not so much known that we have a part of this collection in Strasbourg. And when we speak about research across border, of course, we think immediately about not only Germany, but also about Poland, Russia, Lithuania, and so on and so forth. Here you have an example of the list of the gift from the former Königsberg University Library that was made to the Strasbourg Library at the end of the 19th century. And this example is the example of a catalogue that has not been digitized and that could be, of course, a good instrument for researchers. Another cross-border area of research studies is the fact that we have in Strasbourg we had the opportunity at the end of the 19th century to buy the collection of a great Dante collector. It was a German collector. His name was Karl Witte, and he had the opportunity to build a huge collection about Dante. And this man was also the founder of the German Dante Society, which was the first Dante Society in Europe. The Dante Society in Germany was founded before the Dante Society in Italy. So to keep in one place the heritage of such a person and to keep the documents that could be bought is also something that makes us think about cross-border research. And we had the opportunity to organize a study day some months ago, which launched international research about that collection. Another example, it looks like a very sad book stacks, but in fact, this is part of a real treasure because it is the library of the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe closed its library 5 years ago and has brought the library as a deposit in the National and University Strasbourg, and nowadays the documentation produced by the Council of Europe is essentially a digital one, so the confrontation between digital material and printed material is also something important. I think in the valorization of cultural heritage, something also important is the fact that we live today. I don't believe in the end of the book, but I believe perhaps in the end of smaller libraries as a medium of transmissions, because we see in many public libraries that private libraries are being dispersed. Families don't want to keep them anymore. We see also smaller libraries that are dispersed sometimes. And in Strasbourg, I have a good example of that. This is the library of a researcher whose name is Abraham Moll. Abraham Moll was a researcher active in acoustics, in musicology, but also in psychology, in sociology. He built his own classification for his collection, and we could, this library was given to the University Library of Strasbourg, and we could keep the classification he made. It has not been catalogued yet, but it's offered for research. And when you know that a person like Abraham Moll is not known anymore in France, but he has researchers that work about his, that are active about his work in Latin America, in Northern America, and so on and so forth. So I think that libraries are not only places where past and future meet, in the sense that past is given for future investigation, but they are also, of course, places where heritage and digital face each other, and not only because the digital tools can make valorization of ancient heritage easier. Digital and heritage face also each other in the sense of several different research material. Another example, this is part of poster collections. We are in an electoral period, European electoral period, and this is an example of a huge poster collection we have about elections in Europe since the foundation of the European Union, so a very big poster collection. And the confrontation between this poster collection and the new ways where electoral campaigns are made, thanks to the social networks and the digital possibilities, offers, of course, good tools for investigation. And thanks to a partnership we have with the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, with the French National Library, the National and University Library of Strasbourg has begun to collect websites of electoral web pages. Here an example of the elections of, I think it was of 2013, and the fact that we can offer printed material and digital material from the legal deposit of the web is also something very important for researches. So I wanted to emphasize that role of libraries as, I will use a French expression, but I think it has become universal, libraries of lieux de mémoire, as memory places, and I think they are very important to develop proactive strategies in direction of the world of research. So what can be those proactive strategies for a memory institution? I think it is very important to define the role. In France, when you speak about research data, you have two main directions. You have research data in university or in national repositories. This is the French National Repositories for Open Archive, HAL, which is Hyper Archive Online. This is the national repository, which has also regional expressions. This one, which is Open Archive for Knowledge, is the regional Open Archive repository of the University of Strasbourg. And of course, this Open Archives of the University of Strasbourg is linked with the National Repository. And research data for the results of research are those one, but in the libraries, of course, you have the material, the digital material on which research is based, and I think it is an added value of the library, the gathering and the fact that they point out material for the researchers. So I think libraries are really at the crossroad, but like other institutions, like archives, like museums, between constitution, preservation, and dissemination of heritage, with that specificity, which is that the fact that in libraries, heritage is first a source of information. It becomes heritage later, but when it is produced, it is a source of information. So I think it is all the more important in the preservation of a collective memory for future generations. How documentation becomes research material, that is, how documentation becomes heritage materials. I think there are, once again, several steps. The first step is when catalogs are available online, and retroconversion is, of course, the first step. And when I speak about catalogs, I speak also about cross-border catalogs. Everyone here, I think, knows this collective catalog, the Karlsruhe virtual catalog, that gives access to resources not only from Germany and German-speaking languages, but from overall the world. And I think such tools can be inspirational also for area studies. In the region where I come from, in the region of Alsace, we are nowadays thinking about a kind of small KVK which would give an access to the catalogs of all the libraries located in the Upper Rhine region. That is, libraries from Karlsruhe and Freiburg in Germany, from Strasbourg and Mulhouse in Alsace, and from Basel in the Switzerland. So we cannot speak about area studies, but we could speak of the local declination of a general tool, and I think it's important to make some resources more visible, because you can find everything on the KVK, but it's not visible as a local production. So we are thinking about making a small KVK. I don't know if we manage it, but I think it is a good tool to valorize the documentation from the Upper Rhine region. Because if you don't catalog, it's obvious, but you keep only sleeping masses. Second idea, and I'm also speaking here about cross-border access. It is a project we have with a system, a French system, which I will talk about a little later. In Germany, there are the so-called special services for research, the FID. And in France, we have another system which was inspired by the FID and which is called COLEX, for Collection d'Excellence. I will speak about that system COLEX a little later. But we have the idea of creating a kind of meeting platform between the specialized online libraries and specialized platforms that are developed in the frame of VIFA-Nord, of the FID. Here you have the platform VIFA-Nord, virtual specialized library for Nordic studies. And our goal is to build links between the French excellence collections about Nordic studies and those excellence collections in Germany, in order to make about a special topic, here the Nordic studies, resources that come from French catalogs available for German researchers and vice versa, to make indications that are available for the German researchers accessible to French researchers. And I think it is perhaps an idea to make collections more accessible to researchers. Another good example also developed by the German FID is the platform CrossAsia, which is a very effective one and which is used by every researchers that are interested with Asia studies. And of course, a third step for making collections more available for research is when documents themselves are available online, and I'm speaking here about digital libraries. And it is a good thing to build your own digital library, but I think digital libraries are useful when they are linked to more larger ones. And that's why in Strasbourg, when we built our digital library, we decided to link it with the one of the French National Library. That means that we use the tools of the French National Library for our own digital library. And thanks for using this tool, our digital library, which is called Numistral, is linked to the digital library of the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, Gallica, and this one is linked with Europeana. We have a new homepage for this digital library of the Strasbourg academic site. And as you see on that homepage, we define some what we called univers thématique, thematic universes about many topics. You see here on the screen history, and here this small part of our digital library you can find, for example, the digitized collections about World War I, about who I spoke at the beginning of my conference. And you have also other topics, and you see, for example, that we have a part of our digital library about Europe. And in this part about Europe, you can find some parts about Scandinavian studies and also history and Nordic civilization. So I think it's very important to make digital data available online. In this context, we also try to develop some labs. So I am a little embarrassed to speak about the project of the Strasbourg lab after having heard what is done in the Netherlands, because we are not so in advance. But we would like to create a data lab in Strasbourg with an offer which focuses around 4 categories. Of course, digital resources, but also digital tools, competencies, and a kind of animation for a greater public. So we are really at the beginning, so I cannot say much more about our data lab, but I think it will be a meeting point between research and collection. Because it is an important question, you could think that once you have digitized many collections, once you have made them available online, the researchers will come. But it's not so easy, it's only theoretical. It is not because you put many things online that the researchers come. And I think it is one of the main challenges of the libraries that preserve an important cultural heritage. It is how to make this heritage living, how to link the digital mass you have put at disposal for research and the researchers. And I think it is particularly important in the field of humanities because in France, it's something certain, but researchers in humanities are not very familiar with digital tools. And it is also a challenge to make them more familiar with digital tools. So how to link researchers and collections for a digital approach in cultural heritage? If I would say it in another way, I would say how documentation can go to researchers, how researchers can go to documentation in the digital world. The examples I took about Dante, about the Council of Europe, are collections that are still today not so much studied. So I think data labs are good tools, but data labs are only tools. We must think before we create data labs about what could be meeting points between researchers and documentation. And that's why in France we were inspired with what was done in Germany with the system of FID, and we built 2 years ago a new system which is called, said before, COLEX, for Collection of Excellence for Research. And this system at a national level really aims to be the meeting platform between researchers and collections. There is also an English page for the description of the COLEX system, so you can go on the website and read it very easily.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. So the interesting thing is that this COLEX system was wanted by the Ministry of Higher Education, but it is organized by a library. It is our library that has the task to organize that system. And in this frame, COLEX has many tasks. I don't have the time to list all the tasks, but among the projects, there are collection of excellencies, among which I already named this project about a platform for Nordic studies, for which we are in connection with the FID about Nordic studies in Germany, and we would like to profit of that infrastructure in France to build networks and to build bridges between researchers. And the next step will be the Congress of the Association for Nordic Studies, in which not only Bibliotheca Baltica, but also the FID Kiel in Germany will be invited. So, as a conclusion, I would say that libraries as heritage providers is a very important topic, because the providing of heritage by libraries can also change the way people see themselves. And here I don't speak anymore about researchers, but I speak about the greater public. I spoke at the beginning of my speech of the action that could allow to link the collections we had in our library, which is now a French one, with other collections that can be found in German library. And I think it contributed not only what we did about World War I, but also what we did with digitization of academic material of the Strasbourg University, which has a strong and important German-French past. I think that with such actions, we can contribute as librarians to change the way people see themselves. And I will give you only very quick an example, the fact that the city of Strasbourg is twice on the UNESCO heritage list. It is on the heritage list since 2 decades for the inner part of the city. But it is also since 2 years in the heritage list for the German part of the city. And I think it is something that couldn't have been possible 20 years ago, because the mentalities were not ready for that. But if you make documentation available online on a large scale, you can also change the way people see themselves, and it allows also other actions. And I will end with the last one, which is an action that contributes to make from a small provincial city a city which is in dialogue with the rest of Europe. It is, of course, what we had the pleasure to present yesterday, a double issue in French and in Latvian of the Journal of the BNU about the heritage, the European heritage in Strasbourg and in Riga. I don't have time to say more, but I give you some mail addresses, my addresses, and also the address of the person in France who is responsible for the whole COLEX network, and the addresses of my colleague in the National University Library in Strasbourg, which is responsible for Nordic studies. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I think it was another added value to this day. Thank you very much, Christoph. But I also would like to get some added value from you. Any questions or comments? I would be very happy hearing it, because I think the speech was very good. Of course, I do have questions as a backup. I would just like to have some interaction.